Hello everyone, my name is Parnian. I'm a PhD student at Concordia, and I'm going to present our paper for ICASSP 2020. So the title of our research is MDR-SURV, a multi-scale deep learning-based radiomics for survival prediction in pulmonary malignancies. We have done this research with our collaborators from Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto and also University of Toronto. So first, I will talk about the motivation behind this study. I will briefly introduce the prior works on the same subject. I will introduce our proposed MDR-SURV for the prediction of overall survival. I will introduce the dataset we use for evaluation and the results we got. At the end, I will conclude the presentation. So first of all, this study is about patients that are diagnosed with lung cancer. All these patients have gone through PET-CT imaging, and after the imaging, they have been treated with a treatment called SBRT. So the goal of this study is to see if the SBRT treatment is effective for a new lung cancer patient coming in, where effectiveness is measured in terms of overall survival in our study. So researchers have tried to solve this problem using either handcrafted radiomics or deep learning. In handcrafted radiomics, they extract features from the lung tumor volume and perform some kind of feature selection and machine learning methods to predict the overall survival. Handcrafted radiomics, however, require segmentation, and features extracted through this process might not be actually correlated with the OS. Deep learning radiomics, however, does not need the segmentation, and so it's not time consuming, and we do not require the radiologist to be there all the time. And also, since the features are extracted to maximize the accuracy, there is a guarantee that these features are correlated with the OS. But even the studies on deep learning-based radiomics for prediction of overall survival have some limitations. For example, they are only based on CT images, which means they have not considered the PET images that have very beneficial importance in the sense that they show us the activity of the tumor. They have not considered different scales of the tumor, and they have not considered other clinical factors such as age, gender, or SUV. So what I mean by using several scales instead of one scale is that in this study, we have fed the network with 3 different scales for both CT and PET images. The first scale we use is an image that completely fits the tumor. Using this image, we can extract features like shape and texture from the tumor region only without considering the neighboring regions. After the first scale, we have the second scale, which is generated by adding pixels to the boundary of the tumor so that we can extract local features from the neighboring region of the tumor. And the third scale is generated by extending the second scale model so that we can have more global features from the neighboring of the tumor. And we have done this scaling for all CT and PET images for all the patients. This is the architecture we came up with for the prediction of overall survival. We have used 2 parallel CNNs, each of which is fed with CT or PET images. The output of the CNNs are either CT risk or PET risk that are then concatenated with other clinical factors such as age, gender, SUV, and dose, and are fed to a random survival forest to predict the cumulative hazard function through all the nodes in the tree. And all the CNNs are trained considering the Cox partial likelihood as the objective function. So in brief, our proposed MDR-SURV framework is generated from 7 steps. In the first step, we have to take the CT and PET slices for all the patients from the middle slice of the tumor. We crop the CT and PET images based on the multi-scale criteria I talked about. We zero-pad all the images because our proposed framework needs fixed size inputs. And then for both CT and PET components, we stack all these three scales to be fed to the network. After training the CNNs, we take the outputs of the CNNs, which are CT risk and PET risk. We combine them with clinical factors and feed them to a random survival forest. The dataset we use for evaluation of our model is an in-house dataset from Sunnybrook Hospital. We got 132 early-stage lung cancer patients. The average age was 75 years old, and all the patients underwent the SBRT treatment. All the images are annotated by our radiologist, who has 14 years of experience. All the patients are followed up for minimum of 2 years after the treatment, and the study ends when either the patient dies or for some reason stops being followed up. So first, we evaluated our model in terms of concordance index or CIndex, which basically measures the accuracy of sorting the patients based on their survival time. So using our proposed MDR-SURV framework, we got 73% CIndex, which is higher than using only the single scale models. And by single scale models, I mean the scales that the models that contain only one scale instead of all the three scales. The tree shown here is one of the trees obtained from the random survival forest. By following this tree and going through the nodes, we can predict the cumulative hazard function for all the patients. In another experiment, we tried to see which predictors are more important for the problem at hand. We measured the importance of the variables using a criteria called variable importance or VIMP. Using this criteria, what we do is to eliminate the variables one by one and measure the impact of eliminating this variable on the performance of the model. So using this criteria, we observe that CT risk, PET risk, age, and SUV are actually important for predicting the overall survival, whereas gender and radiation dose can be safely removed from the model and to not consider them for further investigations. So in conclusion, in this study, we propose a multi-scale deep learning model for prediction of overall survival for patients before going through the SBRT treatment. Our proposed framework has two main components. The first component is a CNN-based model, which takes the PET and CT images as inputs and outputs the PET and CT risk, which are then combined with clinical factors such as age, gender, SUV, and radiation dose, and outputs the final cumulative hazard function. Our experiments showed that the proposed framework outperforms the single-scale counterparts, and in the future, we aim to consider other slices of a tumor, because in this study, we only consider the middle slice for each tumor. In future, we will consider all slices at all different scales. Thank you, and I hope this presentation was useful for you.